And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guests are Paul and Syann, who are both lifelong contactees of the Zeta race and have conscious recall of their contact with the beings that they work with. They are both deep trance mediums and spirit guides to assist others. Paul and Syann, thank you guys so much for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
All right, before we get started, about 2 weeks ago, I had Kathleen Martin on, and she was here talking about how she was healed by a Zeta being named Keek. Can you guys give us your viewpoint on what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So I met Kathleen, I think it was in 2012. I'd been developing for a long time. When I say developing, it was, sort of meditating, working on trance, those sorts of things. And I'd started to get contact with these beings, that were called Zetas or Greys. And one day they said, we'd like to start working with some humans and see if we can do some healing. And I'd noticed that Kathleen had put up a experiences survey. And so I decided to do the survey. I think it was only 25 people on that survey, but then I contacted Kathleen. We started to talk, and Kathleen alluded to the fact that she'd been unwell. And I said, well, why don't you talk to the Zetas through me? And what'll happen is you can maybe talk to them about that. So I didn't know anything. Kathleen spoke to Keek, and then Keek said that he would heal her. And next thing we know, Kathleen's healed. And I was a bit surprised by the whole thing personally. I'd never been involved with healing before with these extraterrestrial beings. I didn't know that they could be so clear and succinct in what they said that they could do. And we've seen, since then, hundreds of people get healed by them.
In the beginning, I mentioned you're a trance medium, and you just said that you weren't really aware of what was going on. Is that how it usually plays out for you?
Look, when you first start off, there's levels of trance. There's sort of inspirational trance, inspirational speaking, light trance, overshadowing, trance, deep trance, physical mediumship, where you could be unconscious. And so in the beginning, I guess I had more of a conscious understanding, as would you, Syann, in regards to trance work. But as you develop over many years, what takes place is the beings that come and speak through you require more and more control, so that when they say that they're going to do something like heal somebody or do some teaching or whatever, they're able to actually perform the function that they say that they want to do. And so for a lot of people, I think it's a journey, their mediumship, their trance work is a journey.
And I think it's worth adding that no two healings with the Zetas are ever the same either. So when the Zetas say they're going to heal somebody, we don't know whether that healing is going to be instant, in that it could happen whilst we're talking to you right now, or they're going to come overnight like they did with
put you on a
Kathleen.
craft, and we've seen that happen many times, where we've said to people, well, look, the Zetas have offered healings, and so we've sat there together, gone into trance, that the energy in the room has shifted. There's been 10 people in the room, and next thing, half of them have ended up on craft.
And healed.
And been healed as well.
I would assume that if people find out about this, you would have a giant line of people trying to contact you for healing.
Yeah.
We do have many people contacting us
already.
Yeah, it's an area that we do work in.
Yeah.
But the Zetas, it's their decision.
It's always their decision. I mean, we can ask our spirit guides if they want to work with somebody, like for healing. And often they do a very good job as well. Other people will, we need to manage expectation. That's what it comes down to. Quite often, it takes a while to become unwell. It's a journey that your body's on. And so for the Zetas to bring somebody to wellness via different methods, etheric body, whatever, it needs to be a rolling back of what the person has spent many months or years doing to themselves.
I like that you said that becoming unwell is a journey. And
Yeah.
you also believe that our unwellness is due to our own conscious state?
Well, there's a few ways of thinking about it. When I speak to the Zetas say that, I'll give you an example. So I've been unwell, say, 50 times, right? And then I have to sort of do a public sitting. And a public sittings means that you're sitting there in trance and the Zetas will be talking to 20 or 30 people. What'll happen is I could be really unwell, but while they're with me, I am absolutely perfect, 100% healed. When they leave, they place back the unwellness, and people go, "Whoa, that's no good." What the Zetas have explained to me is that your higher self doesn't understand unwellness because it doesn't actually exist in the physical. Your consciousness exists around you. Your higher self creates a construct that it filters your reality through. And so what the Zetas do is they move a person in trance into a nexus, a meeting point with their higher self. And at that point in time, there is no physical unwellness.
So are you saying that once you just connect with your higher self, that'll heal your body?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if all just for a temporary moment.
It can be for a temporary moment. Yeah. I mean, it's not easy to hold yourself in a loving state of connection with your higher self. If your higher self was meant to be in contact with you all the time, it would be. But because it's using your construct as a methodology to define reality, then there's the differentiation between your higher self, the construct, and your physical reality.
Would it be accurate to say that instead of using the word higher self, we can say that that's where your complete self is, and here is our limited self?
Absolutely. That is a really good way of saying it. So we do a lot of work with people with what's called their point of origin. Point of origin means that people are seeking to define where they were before they moved into this three-dimensional state within this physical environment. What happens is often they then go on a journey once they find out what their point of origin is, whether they're extraterrestrial or angelic or celestial or interdimensional. And at that point in time, they then are able to understand much more about themselves and become that whole person.
Can you define for us the difference between consciousness and our mind and how the higher self interacts with those?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with your point of origin. So before you've existed physically, you've decided to come, and either as a spirit, extraterrestrial, or whatever definition, you then move into a physical form through the birthing process. Now, what you need to do is you need to develop a construct. And the construct is all of your biases, your rule sets, your automatic thoughts, the way that you see the world. And in doing so, higher self then defines you by the personality of that construct. You then define yourself by that construct by interacting with everybody around you.
That construct is the mind?
Yeah.
All right. And then consciousness has to interact with that construct then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, for sure.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the different points of origin?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, big question. How big is the universe or the multiverse? So we've come across, how many different races do you think?
So I have no idea. I've lost contact.
So many different races. When we do the point of origin work with people, people generally, it's so interesting. People could have spent their life drawing specific patterns and shapes. We don't get that information from them. They then do a point of origin sitting with us. And next thing we find out through the Zetas that the person, that's what they do in their real existence, not their former existence. Because when you leave your physical three-dimensional, human form, you just move back to that process. A lot of people just think, well, I'm spirit, I'll go back to spirit realm. But some people are actually hybrids. So they live in a symbiotic relationship with spirit people within their own physical form. And what they do is they then go back to their own extraterrestrial or interdimensional origins. within this galaxy, there'd be about 1,000 races that are interacting with this planet that are, let's think about this. This civilization is not the first civilization that's inhabited this planet. All humans that are here have some type of extraterrestrial or interdimensional origins. A lot of us feel that we don't belong here. And so what we're looking for is to understand where is our point of insertion into this environment. Some would say that it's a prison environment. Some people have made those statements. When we've asked the spirits and extraterrestrial about that, they say it's because it's a container. And your physical body is a container that is a construct for spirit. A person's consciousness may allude to or believe that they are in a prison environment because of the fact that they're within a construct. The spirits say, well, think about this. What about spirit realm? Is spirit realm a construct that people can be trapped in? Not really, because they can move in and out of that construct as well. But from a spirit's perspective, an earthbound spirit, they may believe that in some way or form that they're actually trapped.
We actually we spoke to an interdimensional being about a month ago, and this was through somebody's point of origin sitting that this information then transpired, and their primary reason for being associated with the human here as a person, physical person on this earth, was to overcome the perception of the confinement of the 3D form. And so that kind of ties in with that whole perception of being on a prison planet or trapped.
It's quite interesting. We've also seen people use journeying, psychotropic methodologies to journey. They've gone into these interdimensional states, come back. When the plant medicine or whatever's worn off, they found that they've been accompanied back by a dimensional entity. Now the dimensional entity can't get back to their place because the container that they're now with in consciousness is of a lower frequency. The person has to journey back to the state that they are in to release the consciousness.
What about reincarnation? How does that play in with all of this?
Do you want to talk about reincarnation?
No, I'm going to let you talk.
Yeah, let me do it. Oh, okay. So we work with a lot of different spirits, and we love the spirit people that we work with. We've evidenced them heavily. They've given us all of their information for evidence. They say that they come from an oversoul. An oversoul is like a diamond, and each of those faces of that diamond are an individuated form, and that individuated consciousness then incarnates into a physical form to produce a life and a generational line. So absolutely, there is incarnation, no problem.
Yeah.
Before the show, you'd mentioned that you have had near-death experiences.
Yeah.
Were these experiences a catalyst to you coming in contact with the Zetas, or did that contact happen prior to that?
Okay, so I remember when I was 5, I was on craft. Syann was on craft as a child. We were on craft together. There's an age difference. They're able to loop back on time. I had the Zetas come when I was 18 in craft. They showed themselves to myself and other people. We had the Zetas come multiple times and land in craft with other people present.
But your NDEs,
NDEs,
they've been interlaced with your
I'm
project.
just trying to work this out because with the NDEs, I had a big fall when I was climbing, and I fell from the top of a 13 or 14 meter rock face all the way down. I missed the ground, and I thought I was going to die. I screamed all the way down. I've been told that after a car accident that I passed, but then I came back. I've had about 4 or 5 of them. I got burnt in a rather large fire, unfortunately.
That's the understatement.
Which is an understatement. I believe that what happens is each time that we're taken to the edge of our existence, our knowing existence, what happens is we lose the distance between where we are now and where we're from. And because of that, it means that ultimately there is no veil anymore. And the only veil that we have that stops us from connecting to spirits and other beings is the walls that we set up for ourselves for safety. And so what we're doing is our fears sometimes are what stop us from getting contact with the correct spirits. You know, people that sort of just jump straight into this, don't take any practical sort of, I'm not sure what the word would be, careful. They're not careful about what they do. They could end up, with spirits that are giving them, problems. We spend more time making sure that we evidence the spirits that we work with, because those spirits, they're wanting to support humanity. They're wanting to help people to grow, and so it's edifying. It's a natural, organic relationship that you have with spirits that grows as you grow yourself. And yes, NDEs, absolutely. They definitely, I'll give you an example. So my father, he died and nobody knew that he was dead. And he came and spoke to me for an hour. And he said that when he first passed over, the first few seconds, he was disorientated, but he'd spoken to me a fair bit. And he said that he realized he just needed to think, and he came straight to me and we had a great conversation. And then the phone rang and they said, look, we've just found your dad. He's been passed over for about an hour. I said, yes, I know, because my dad's here now. Now, they wouldn't have understood what that meant. After about an hour of me talking to him, I said, look, I need to go to sleep, Dad. Can you come back in the morning? He said, yeah, no problem. So I woke up in the morning, bang, he was there straight away, talking. I said to him, look, it's time for you to pass over. Now, I don't mean pass over, go to the light. I'm not saying that. He just needed to move to what's a place called the Healing Hall. And so he went and he was guided to the Healing Hall. And then an angel came to me, and the angel said to me after about 7 months of my father passing, he said, I'd like to take you into spirit realm and I want you to meet your father again. And, when I say angel, I'm not talking about, with big wings or anything, just a light that I could sense was a celestial entity. And next thing I know, I was in an altered state, taken out of my body, pushed into a different vibration, which is spirit realm, because spirit realm is all around us. I then found myself walking with the angel towards my father, and my father was in the healing hall. There were many, many beds, many, many people that had passed over that were recuperating from their journey, from their holiday into the land of the physically living, because I say physically living because, of course, you're living in spirit realm as well. And it was a very, very good experience for me to do that.
Syann, can you tell us how you came into contact with the Zetas?
My experiences started, well, the earliest memory I have is when I was about 3.5, 4 years old, and they came and brought a small boy with them, and I don't know how many times I met with that small boy, but when I met Paul and we were going through all these old photos, there he was. So they would come to me semi-regularly that I remember. I didn't have to do anything to instigate that. That was already, as with other hybrid humans, already part of the plan, and they visit their own.
Yeah.
And as my relationship with them developed, as I've gotten closer to them, more of it's just grown and grown. I'm not able to bring them through as Paul is at this point, although I think I can handle about 8 minutes worth of
9 minutes.
9 minutes. Okay.
There's a bit of a
9
gap
minutes
there,
worth of their conversation. But yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. I mean, it's very difficult to try and summarize it all in one paragraph. It's almost impossible, but the experiences have ranged from screen memory experiences where they've shown themselves as projections to obfuscate their true appearance. So I wouldn't be scared when I was very young. Whereas they didn't need to do that with Paul because his contact was so much more vast. He literally grew up with them from a very young child. And I've also experienced crazy sort of X-File type scenarios with them where I've, been levitated out of the room, experiences that defy any logic and words for the most part when you're recounting them. That I've not had to have any hypnosis, neither of us have, to recall these events. They've allowed us to remember them. Now, whether we remember the partial screen memory and that screen memory has dropped, or more like these days, we just know when they walk into the room, we see them walking into the room. It's as conscious as we're speaking now.
Well, you've been with me when craft have come.
Yeah, absolutely.
We recorded it as well.
Yeah. We've had craft come down over the house. We've photographed them in the back garden over the pool. We have people come round to our house for sittings, and then after the sitting is finished, they say they've seen them at the top of the stairs. They're generally always around, and so it's been a long journey, but it's been incredible and scary and amazing all at the same time.
You mentioned screen memory. What is that?
You can answer that question.
The screen memories, lots of races use screen memories. It's not just the Zetas, but we'll talk about the Zeta screen memories because that's our predominant information. We've managed to, over the years, define 5 or 6 different types of screen memory category that they use. They range from complete absent missing time that will never be recovered. It doesn't matter what you do, you're just never going to get that back.
And we call that class A.
Yep, class A. You're going to have to fill me in on the gaps here. Or a narrative, which is the more obviously remembered and recalled.
Class B.
Class B. Or the narrative that has like a timestamp. So it's designed to fail. Like a Band-Aid has been put over a memory with a little tiny bit up on the edge that catches and rips off. That's a type C.
That's type C.
And the projections, I can't remember what we call them, but whether it's an E or an F.
They're the D and they're the constructs.
They're the constructs. But they use them for lots of different reasons. But the main reason is to protect the mind of the hybrid, of the person, to ensure that the construct doesn't become damaged, because these experiences can be absolutely hair-raising.
It all started in the past about 80 years ago. They used to come and they'd take little plugs of skin and they'd work out, whether the person's consciousness was bound to the cellular time. And this is why people were getting all these plugs of skin taken.
People call them scoop marks.
Scoop marks, yeah. And then what they started to do was they started to realize they were causing psychological damage. Also immune responses in regards to contact. And so they started to work with the etheric body of people to have a look at how the etheric body was integrating with the symbiotic relationship between the extraterrestrial consciousness and the mind. But what they started to realize is that they needed to embed different types of screen memories based around the Schumann frequency, so that ultimately people wouldn't be damaged psychologically from contact.
To keep the construct occupied whilst the real event, whatever it was happening.
So an example would be, we'll use a Class B narrative. A Class B narrative is that you believe that you're holding a baby on a craft.
Or you're flying the craft.
Or that you're actually flying the craft. But what's taking place is that your construct is being given the information. You're fully embedded in the holographic consciousness of the imagery. But if you, as a hybrid, your extraterrestrial nature is off to the side discussing, communicating with your own race.
And these stories they give people, these narratives, these screen memories, they are fully immersive. You would really not be able to tell the difference between, unless there's something really peculiar about it, like, you know, there's a bunny rabbit in your hallway and they're 6 foot tall, unless there's something very obvious about it. If they are designed to replicate our real normality, our normal life, you won't know the difference. It will be a real experience for you.
There's a lot of this information in some of the books. We give some books away for free.
Yeah.
One of them's called the Zeta Interviews. It's about 700 pages. So there's a lot of information in that.
People can read about it.
So what you're saying is that, for example, the narrative class B is they just give you some kind of manufactured memory that's not real, but it's so good that you believe it's real.
Absolutely.
Because our construct mind can't really handle the real contact that we had.
Yeah, I'll give you a really good example, and we'll go through some of them. So you're in bed and you're going to be taken onto craft. So what's going to happen is you're going to be given a class A screen memory because you're going to have missing time. You're not going to remember a certain event that took place. And that may be leaving the bed and going through the wall because you had to be dematerialized to move through the wall. Next thing you know, you're on craft, you're having a class B narrative where you're holding a baby, looking at a tube with all human bits and pieces in it or whatever.
Or flying a craft.
Or flying a craft, whatever you're doing. And then you'll be coming back and you'll be placed in the bed and you could be given a class C screen memory where you don't remember any of it, but it's basically got a biometric timer attached to it. 10 years from now, suddenly you're washing the dishes and you go, holy crap, I remember that I was on craft and this is what happened and I've got children and all these things. So you can see that a person that's being contacted can have multiple screen memory levels that are given to them.
We work with a lot of people unpicking all of that.
Yeah, we do that, yeah.
And it can take a long time.
Do you have any idea what percentage of the population this is happening to?
Yeah, about 30%. So the Zetas have said that there are, so firstly, we've had a lot of contact with Arcturians, Palladians, the Zetas, and some people call it the Galactic Federation, but we don't. We call it the Council of Nine. And the Council of Nine have been fairly prolific in our lives in regards to managing what goes on around us, who comes and discusses with us, what beings will come through the trance states. We've worked out from all of the discussions that we've had, even with the Anunnaki, as well as the Honorians and the Sirius A and a lot of other beings, that about 30% of the human population are cognitively aware of the fact that they have an extraterrestrial component to themselves.
Earlier you mentioned the Schumann frequency.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's a frequency, I think it vibrates at about 7.83 hertz.
What could be 7.38?
Or 38 or 83, but math's not a very good area for me, but dyslexic. So the Schumann frequency is used as an alignment method for the embedding of screen memory technology. But the thing is that spirit people use it as well. So when you move from spirit realm into the physical dimension, you generally can't remember much about yourself having existed in spirit realm. The Schumann frequency is a resonant frequency around the planet that you use to stay grounded. That grounded state that we are embedded in also has in it the technology of the embedded screen memory. So the extraterrestrials are using the Schumann frequency as well to embed screen memories within humans' consciousness.
Are all humans hybrids?
No. No, so there are a lot of humans that are specifically just purely from spirit realm.
Yeah,
but
it depends how technical you want to get.
Like we could get quite technical. We could talk about, let's say, imagine a sphere, and the sphere is spirit realm, and then we say, well, inside the sphere is what's classed as multiple oversouls, and each of that could have infinite shards of consciousness that like to embed themselves in as the human experience. Above that is what's classed as the nexus point. the nexus point is where celestials and interdimensionals, angelic beings move into spirit realm and then incarnate into the physical form. And so when we look at who is what person is this, what person is that, it could be that a person can, absolutely be spirit, but can also have an embedded component that is celestial as well. They don't need to actually be extraterrestrial. They can be interdimensional or angelic.
In the beginning, you mentioned that the Zetas are the Greys. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Where are they from?
Start from the beginning.
We'll start from do you want to start from the beginning?
I was going to say there are 63
Yeah.
races to the species of grey alien, as we humans call them.
And 62 of them are part of the collective consciousness or the hive mind. And one of the races which is known as the Greys are the ones that do most of the abductions. And they don't care about humanity's free will, they just do them. The other 62 races, and we've met 7 of them.
7 or 8.
7 or 8 of them. They all provide specific functions. They work for the betterment of a species.
And they abide by free will.
And they abide by free will. So if you say no, no means no, they won't work with you.
Are they from the Zeta Reticulum?
Are they from the Zeta Reticulum? That is a massive question. I would suggest that I think it's called the horologium, is a much larger area. And a lot of the different races come from around those areas. But in the past, the Greys actually were developed from plant life. So a lot of people don't know this. They talk about biological clones, entities, containers. But prior to all of that, in their own evolution, they themselves came from plant life. Now, as they moved through their evolutionary processes, they started to move into technological civilizations, and a lot of the beings now live on craft.
Yeah.
And some of them live in underground.
Some of them live underground.
Well.
Some of them don't live on the surface. Different planets, different places, different systems.
Yeah.
How are they able to get here and cross those vast distances?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's multiple ways to do it. So I'll give you an example. The first way is that you can project your consciousness to a point, and then using what's called a fine matter, you can then populate and materialize into that physical space. And that's what spirits use to create apports. The second one is where you put a container, a physical form that's been maturated onto a craft, but with no consciousness. The craft has the consciousness. The craft then can use different types of technologies, dematerialized states, space-time compression, and move from one point of existence to another, and then arrive here. The biological entities do not have a consciousness. Once the craft arrives, the beings then just project their consciousness into the form, enliven the form, and the beings are now fully cognitive of their process that they need to perform.
Yeah.
Yep, so that's the second one. The other one is where you've got humans or another species traveling on the craft as well, and they actually have to use portals or gateways to move from one. So I'll give you an example. We've got the reticulum here and Earth here. They travel for a few days to like a wormhole type technology, jump from that through space-time to another one, then travel from 3 days to the planet. So realistically, the journey takes 6 days.
Is there like a mothership that all of these smaller craft get in and travel through, or are these smaller?
They can do that. They've got craft that I've seen. One of those craft was powering up near the sun, and it was I've never seen anything. It must have been massive to be that big, and it was one of the new craft. In the past, so people are talking about Tic Tacs and all these things. The first craft that came to me and my friends was about 8 meters away in daylight, and it was about 8 meters across. Looked like a cigar or a Tic Tac. The side went clear, and there was 2 Zetas inside, and they watched us for 2 minutes while we watched them. Years later, another craft landed, had about 15 people with me, and about 10 Zetas came out and walked around.
That was circular.
That was a big circular craft.
Probably about 30 foot in diameter.
Yeah. The craft that came over the house.
That was about 8 meters.
Was 8 meters, but there was a much bigger one that came. We recorded that one.
Oh, I don't know how big that one was.
That was a big craft.
I'm talking about the little one.
The thing is, people go, wow, I want this experience. Okay, you want this experience. Make sure that you are prepared for the ramification of the experience. These beings do not like to be observed. What they want is to interact with you in a way where you're not projecting any biases or fears onto them. And so if we want true contact with extraterrestrials, we need to stand in a space where we're authentic, where we are in a non-fear and non-judgmental relationship with them, and that they understand that we hold our sovereignty when we're in relationship with them. And when we do that, then we have a relationship that flows. Yep, and absolutely, there's some pretty big craft out there.
I guess it would take some, if not some, a lot of preparation of ourselves to be able to get there, to be able to hold space with them.
We call it heterodyning. So we were taught by the Zetas many years ago about this new process. People, and I tried it myself, CE5. I wasn't too successful. Yeah, there's lights out in the sky, those sorts of things. I wanted them to come to the house.
Lights in the sky is not enough.
That's not enough for me.
To know who you're working with.
So we started asking them, well, what is the method? There must be some method that you would like to see where. So a lot of people are talking about what's called the phenomenon. They're in the house, suddenly the ET turn up, next thing you know, they've got spirits, these things. That the fabric and the distortion takes place in the room. They don't understand what's going on. They haven't had years of sort of contact with ET. And so we asked them, I said, well, what is it that people could do for themselves? I said, well, if you learnt about the difference, what is your energy compared to another person's energy? Because if you understand your own energy, then when the energy shifts around you, you will understand it's not your energy, but an external energy to you. They see that if a person can understand that, then when they affect the energy around you, that you can then create some type of relationship. Now, you may not understand what you're doing, but the tool that you have with you is breathing, and your breathing carries within it all harmonics. It's the first thing you do when you're born, and the last thing that you do when you pass is breath. And the breath holds within it the capacity to build what's called compression states. These compression states, we teach this, the compression states helps people to develop a good, strong relationship with ET.
You have a handbook called the Zeta Mind, which is to help people, learn how to safely contact ETs. Is that what you're teaching in that handbook, or other stuff?
Yeah, that's what we're teaching.
Yeah.
That's what we're teaching. We just finished the last book. It's called Inside the Hive Mind, and that's my journey in regards to how I went from as a child all the way through to where I am now. But the Zeta Mind is just a small handbook that goes through and talks about the basics of contact in a way that a person can understand what is their etheric body, what is the difference between external energy, energy that's close to you. How do you extend your consciousness? There's a lot to this. If it was that easy that people could have ET walking around the house or with them, it would just be happening. But these, as I said before, they do not want to be observed, because when you observe something, you change it. Yeah. So from their perspective, they need you to be as neutral as possible. And you have to understand your own energy so that when you're in their presence, that you're not embedding anything into their consciousness.
You would think, or at least I would think, they would have an ability to somehow shield themselves from our consciousness.
But that's not relationship. You see, if they have to shield themselves from us, they're not communicating effectively with us. But what they want is to be able to effectively talk to us in a very clear telepathic methodology. And to do that, they need to not put up the barriers that would block the things that come from us to them.
From what you're saying, it appears that, to me, full disclosure is never going to happen. One, because it'll totally mess up the construct, and two, we can't, regulate ourselves.
Look, there's two types of disclosure. The first one is humans will disclose continually. And let's say that today humans say, look, yep, aliens exist. It's all happening. We've got it all here. And we all go, okay, great. There's extraterrestrials. We all know, thank you so much for the disclosure. Tomorrow, we all walk outside and we look into the skies and we go, where are the ET? And the ET don't come, and they can't come because we have too many biases in regards to our communication processes with them. Yeah? It's like you don't want to be around somebody that's negative, right? So they're not saying we're negative, but they are saying, well, if you want to communicate with us, learn about your own energy, learn about your own breath work, learn about what the difference is between your thoughts and another's thoughts, so that when you get these telepathic communications from them to you, that you understand that it's a process that flows, and it's a very organic process.
Why are they here? To study us or to help us?
Interestingly, the races are here because in the future, when this species on this planet has developed enough technology, as is already taking place, they're going to, this species, travel. And on the timeline, it's seen that many, many humans travel into the outer reaches of the galaxy. In doing so, they start to meet all of these other communities and civilizations. These beings have come here knowing that they want to try to manage the contact.
So they want to kind of, get us in a better place before we go out there and start causing trouble.
That's pretty much
That's
it.
exactly right.
That's pretty much it.
Before the new kids on the block roll up and wind down their windows. That's right.
We've been using the word construct, and to me that kind of implies that we live in a simulation like the Matrix.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that we can get to an ability that we can actually manipulate the construct for our own benefit?
You can. You just need to be in what's called a creational space. So using, and heterodyning is used for many different things. You're going to start to hear a lot of people talk about heterodyning over the years when they understand what it actually means and what the capacity is for you to change your reality. It's all based around, everything's based around space-time compression. When you see a craft in the sky and it goes from there to there, it actually moved across. But because we're on a different space-time compression ratio, we think that it goes from there to there, but we don't hear a sonic boom or anything. It's the same for us. We're able to control, in some respects, our reality if we understand that we're in a construct based in consciousness. But we can also interact with the fabric of that construct by using our breathing, by using our consciousness, and by understanding all the different nuances of the fabric around us.
Was the Roswell UFO crash a Zeta ship?
You can answer that question.
How much am I allowed to say?
How much you're allowed to say?
I'm allowed to say yes.
You can say yes.
Yeah, the Zetas that we speak with have said that yes, it was a Zeta ship.
Yeah.
Did they give you any information how the ship crashed?
It wasn't crashed purposefully.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It was not gifted.
It wasn't gifted to humans. So what we've found is, and we had a practical example of this. I was just sitting in the house and I had this telepathic communication that said, turn on your recorder on your phone. We're about to bring in a craft. I never told Cyann what was happening. I just said to Cyann, because that's evidential for me. If I don't tell her that, then I'm not putting an expectation into her mind. Cyann and I went and sat down, and we could hear this sonic ping, wasn't it?
Like a submarine sonar.
A sonar, yeah.
2 tones pinging either side of the house.
As the craft came down, everybody could hear this craft coming down. It was so loud. Anyone in the neighbourhood could hear it. But they were using this ping, this sonic noise, because travelling at very, very slow speeds, the craft aren't actually designed to do that.
No, they become unstable.
They become very unstable. And so there's a couple of different ways that a craft can come down. One is that some type of technology is used to distort through EMF the fabric of the craft. There's a malfunction within the consciousness of the craft and the craft crashes, or the craft just is not in a proper uncompressed state. Now, when I say that, remember, craft often travel from one place to another in a dematerialized state. When they come into the atmosphere, they're not built or designed to correctly work within this 3-dimensional space. I'll give you an example. When they go from air into water, there's no splash. That's because when they enter the water, they move into a different space-time compression. And so this is why these craft do crash, because they're often trying to make the change quite quickly from one state to the next.
You mentioned that the craft has consciousness. So the craft are sentient living beings?
Sentient, yes, absolutely. Yeah. I've been on craft a few times. I was asleep, and a being Keek come and woke me up, the one that healed Kathleen. And he said to me, "Come outside." I said, "No," and just roll back over and put the pillow over my head. And the next thing I know, I've got an ET under each arm, and I'm being walked out, and I could see this craft, and I said, "Oh, okay, I'll come." And I've gone on board, and there's this skeletal type substrate or structure within the craft, and it's like there's beams, and in the middle there's this dome, and this is on some of the larger craft. And I walked up and could see this little 3-fingered pad, and I've got 5 fingers. It was a bit difficult to navigate this thing, but when I actually had a look at it, this geometric shape came out, and it was a multifaceted, multidimensional shape. And the more it was malleable, so the more you shifted the geometric shape, the more you interacted with the craft. It wasn't just about me standing there thinking, it was about me using this geometric shape as a method to actually talk to the craft.
I was wondering about the interface between the ETs and the craft itself.
Yeah.
The crafts don't have a pilot that acts as an interface between the two?
Some craft do. So, we need to be aware that just on planet here, there's all different cars, there's ships, there's planes, there's jets, there's everything. Everything has a different interface. Craft have a different interface as well, depending on who makes them and what race or species they belong to.
And what they use.
The drones, the small drones, they are actually able to be remotely navigated by using telepathic commands. The other craft, generally, some of the big ones will have a pilot. I've been on craft where they have pilot. You've been on craft that's seen pilots as well.
Yeah.
We've been on craft together in full form, physical form, and seen Zetas walking around all performing specific functions on craft. There are other craft where there's like a dome in the middle of the craft, but it's a bucket, 3 buckets, and they lay down together, and they can form a small collective consciousness. And in doing so, they then interact with the craft, and they're able to, get the craft generally know what they're doing anyway. So it's like, I'll give you an example. Humans have worked out that if they get some sort of calcium skeletal structure and in the right viscosity of fluid, they can put some cellular matter around it, it'll bind itself to the skeletal structure, and then they can grow something like an ear. They attach it to somebody's arm or whatever. Well, the Zetas and other races do the same thing, but they use sperm and eggs as well to create some of these craft. Not all craft, just some of them. That's a sort of a testing process that they're currently going through.
Because the cells can hold consciousness.
Yeah, because I'll give you an example. They take human cells, like say sperm and ovum, and what they do is they create a craft, and then they see if a human telepathically can bind with the craft because it's of the same matrix structure as the human, the same genetic structure as the human. No good trying to get myself or you, Jeff, to telepathically connect to a craft that has a very, very complex nucleotide sequence. And so they're working in these type of technologies to try to work out, well, in the future, when everybody's sort of leaving this planet and going off, how are these people going to be working with their craft as well? And I'm pretty sure that although a lot of this stuff sounds like science fiction, that some of this stuff's probably already being worked on.
Are all crafts conscious beings, or are there some that are just nuts and bolts?
There's some that are just nuts and bolts. Absolutely. I'm pretty like the small Tic Tac that came. I mean, this thing was only 8 meters from me and my friends, and it was daylight, full daylight. We were able to look at the beings for 2 minutes. There wasn't much in it. You couldn't see any controls behind them. The depth of the ship was only a couple of meters deep as well. So it was like a cigar. You could imagine that it would be able to move through. We've got this book called A Primer of the Zeta Race that's free for the public, and it was co-written by a scientist. And the Zetas talk about riding on 0-point etheric rails. And so these smaller craft probably are riding on the etheric rails.
If you get too close to the craft, do they emit some type of radiation that can be harmful?
Yeah. So Dr. Gary Nolan, he's been tasked to work with pilots to work out what happens when somebody gets too close to a craft. I've been burnt many times. People have seen me actually get burnt when I've gone near craft or been with extraterrestrials. And that's the other thing people don't realise. Quite often, if an extraterrestrial comes into your presence, you could actually get burnt as well. And that's to do with the frequency that they're emitting. It takes a lot of training, and this comes back to disclosure once again, a lot of training to actually be in the presence of a true extraterrestrial. It's different if it's just telepathic. It's not going to cause you any physical damage. But if they're physically in the room, they're going to cause your cellular physical body to vibrate at a frequency that's much higher than it's normally used to. Yeah. And it's like being microwaved in some respect. Yeah. We've been told by the Zetas if a craft comes not to go near it, and so we don't go near them.
What have you learned about dreams and how they relate to, astral traveling?
So I've been astral traveling since I was 5, and we're very much, we know that our dreams guide us. We work heavily with spirits. Spirits are able to interact with us in our dream states and give us advice. Generally, the advice is for the next day. Yeah. In regards to moving into astral states, I believe, that's a different type of process. We have to understand that the astral is a compilation of all thoughts that have ever been had, not an Akashic record or anything like that, but from a species. And so when you're asleep at night and you shift out of the astral into the astral from your physical, a lot of people just vibrate outside of their physical form by a few inches just to give your consciousness a break from having to actually sit in a much lower density. In doing so, quite often you'll be embedded with all of the imagery that's around you within the astral. And people can then have things like lucid dreaming where they can interact much more cognitively with what's going on around them. Yeah. They can also experience abductions, can't they?
Yeah, I mean, an abduction in the astral can, as I said earlier, can appear just as real as it does in real life. You really wouldn't know the difference unless you've experienced both regularly, and then You get to have a slight awareness of the differences. But I was going to say about dreams, the extraterrestrials, they more often than they used to now do contact people in the dream state, because they understand the damage to the construct by physically arriving,
it's
whereas
easier.
they didn't before.
It's easier. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are there any messages that the Zetas have for humanity?
Yeah. There is the message is, the first message is that you are more. And in saying that, the second message is that ascension does not mean that you are absolved of responsibility, that you must take responsibility for your planet and your species. And in doing so, you will learn about your own abilities. In learning about your own abilities and moving and shifting up in frequency and taking your loving body with you as you walk in that space and demonstrate those abilities to others, that is a true ascension.
You mentioned that you have a few books or several books for free. Where can people find those?
On our website, thezetaconnection.com, we've got what's called published material. Now, there's 2 books on there that people can just download. One is called A Primer of the Zeta Race, written by a scientist and myself, and the other one is The Zeta Interviews, and that's transcripts of about 700 pages of questions and answers between people and the Zetas.
Yeah.
Those books are free to download. If people want to buy them, they're at cost on Amazon, just for a paperback.
Or a Kindle.
Or Kindle as well. Yeah. The other books that are written are Alien Interaction Trilogy, The Zeta Mind Contact, and the latest one, Inside the Hive Mind.
Yeah.
And so each of those books performs a specific function and teaches.
Do you have anything that you're working on besides books that you want people to know about?
Syann and I are always working on our connection. We're always working on, we hold a lot of teaching. We do a lot of training with people. We have a lot of mentoring that takes place. Yeah. And one of the things that we get with people is what's called understanding your experience. So we'll get people come to us, they're having a whole lot of experiences, they don't understand what's going on. We'll then take that information, talk to the Zetas about it, come back, and then have a look at the level of interaction the person's having with extraterrestrials and see where we can try to fill the gap in for them, rather than it just being a big mystery. Actually, what is it that the person may need to do to increase that communication level?
Yeah, I guess having 2 lifetimes worth of experiences with spirits, both natural mediums through to with the extraterrestrials, many different races, we sort of sit on a lot of information that that can really help people, and we really wanted to do that, so that's why we came forward to do that a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
I didn't touch on this earlier, but how did you 2 meet in this lifetime?
She can tell you that story.
We've met a few times. We first met when I was around 3.5, 4 years old. And Paul was around 6 or 7 years old at that point. The second time we met, we were both about 8 or 9 years old. Both those times were on craft, and both those times the Zetas bent the timeline. It's the best way to describe it. Those are apparently the only 2 times we met at the same age on craft. We didn't physically meet on this planet until 2010, but I was sitting for physical mediumship, and I had a lot of things going on that weren't spirit related. So my sisters would describe seeing the beings from communion over me, and obviously, well, that's not a person, that's an extraterrestrial. So I went online to look for somebody that might have the answers, and came across Paul. And so we started communicating via the web forum, PM4U. It was run by the late Robin Foy of the Skull Experiment. So we started chatting through there. And eventually, over a number of years, my contact increased, became more and more. And I was asked by the Zetas if I wanted to work with them in a conscious two-way way rather than things just happening, that I would be involved in that development process. And so I agreed to that. I think that was around 2013. And we communicated ever since, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of meetings on craft. A lot of people have met on craft. Syann was fairly terrified on craft, as were other children. I'd been on craft a lot and was able to stand between the very tall Zeta and Syann and put my hands out between Syann and the Zeta to show Syann that there was nothing to be scared of.
Yeah, that I've condensed some very big stories into a small note. Maybe that's for another time.
Yeah.
Some of my near-death experiencers travel to a water planet.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that?
Well, a lot of people may know that planet by different names, but we know that as Sirius B. The aquatic planet is so interesting. I've actually met some of the beings from the aquatic planet. Some of them look very much like very large fish, different types of sort of gill type things. I would suggest with NDE, and I've had a few of my own as well, and everybody's going to be different because the potentiality of consciousness is infinite. Those places that we go to is generally based around our point of origin. So if those people have basically come from that planet and then incarnated into a physical form, they're only going back home.
It would certainly suggest that they have a strong relationship to that planet.
Absolutely.
The fact that they've seen it in that circumstance.
I've had another guest that's an ET contactee multiple times, and he said one time they took his consciousness out of his body and transported him to some other place. I don't know if it was a ship or another planet, but on that place they had already made a copy of his body.
Yeah.
And they implanted his consciousness in that body. And he said while he was there, the beings were so happy because they had been putting other consciousness in that body, and they were happy to meet the real consciousness that was there.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of experimentation that takes place. Do you know about the box technology that's used? We just did a video on YouTube about it on the Zeta connection. It's called the alien box technology, and a lot of people that are on craft are actually handed a box, and the box is used to hold the consciousness of the human, of the extraterrestrial, because of course they've got two consciousness, ET and spirit. And when they're on craft, if they're on craft as a physical human, they need to have a place to hold in frequency the consciousness of the extraterrestrial, that they are themselves as a hybrid.
Yeah, because they have to change the compression or the atmosphere inside the craft to accommodate the human being on board and fully conscious.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Of course, they have to protect the extraterrestrial side then.
A lot of people that are on craft see mist. That's the compression.
Well, this guy said that while he was there, he met somebody who was also there from South Africa. Yeah. And he said since he's been back, he's been trying to find that guy, but has been unable to do so.
Yeah, we until we started speaking to people a few years ago about meeting on craft, we thought we were the exception to the rule. But what we've actually come across is so many people have actually met people, their friends or partners on craft. It's actually quite a high number. So it's really interesting.
It always starts. Contact's generational. That's the first thing. But whether it skips a generation, but you'll find that mostly it starts very, very early. It starts before you incarnate, and then once you've incarnated, you actually end up on craft.
Well, before we finish up here, can you leave us with one last positive message?
What's going on at the moment isn't what people think. It is about change, and the change is fairly substantial, but there are beings, especially the Zetas, that are very much watching what's going on Of course, we have free will on the planet, and they need to be careful. But to me, I'm just watching what's going on, knowing that it's actually being managed at a much higher level than people believe.
Thank you for that message. And Paul and Syann, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.